Meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's Facebook, and this recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees, please be advised that you will be recorded during this meeting. And councillors, just to remind councillors that in line with the councillor conduct principles as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in the meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interests of the local community, and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support principles of leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. I'll now like to introduce the councillors that are in attendance tonight. We have Councillor Natalie Abood. Hello. Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon. Evening. Councillor Ali Alfrani.
Evening.
Deputy Mayor Councillor Samantha Ratnam. Evening. Myself, Councillor Helen Davidson. Councillor John Kavanagh.
Good evening.
Councillor Dale Martin.
Evening.
And Councillor Mark Riley. Now, the officers in attendance tonight are the Chief Executive Officer, Narina De Lorenzo, Director of Corporate Services, James Scott, Director of City Infrastructure, Grant Thorne, Director of Planning and Economic Development, Kirsten Costa, Director of Social Development, Arden Joseph, Executive Manager of Organisation Development, Anita Craven, Manager of Property and Governments, Olivia Wright, and Unit Manager, Sally Curran. And do we have any apologies tonight, councillors? I have been conveyed Councillor Yildiz apology for tonight. So is there a councillor who wishes to move and second that? I'm happy to move that. Okay, Councillor Alfrani, seconded by Councillor Abood. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And we've also got a request for a leave of absence from Councillor Alfrani. So councillors, we've received Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon and seconded by Councillor John Kavanagh. All those in favour? I declare that carried. So if there's no further apologies tonight, we'll move on to disclosures of interest and or conflicts of interest. So councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to declare tonight? No, none to declare? Okay. We'll move on to the presentation of officers' reports, and the first presentation is the Council Plan for 2017 to 2021, Strategic Resources Plan 2017 to 2022, and the 2017 to 2018 Council Action Plan. And is there a councillor who wishes to move this report?
I'm happy to move it with some amendments, if that's
Councillor
okay. I'm happy to speak to it. So I'll move the report with a number of amendments, and councillors, I've circulated those amendments, apologies for the late circulation, and I'll just run through those for the benefit of the gallery. On page 8, in paragraph 3, this is in the Mayor and CEO's forward, that we add an additional factor to the list of global factors to read: global economic, political and environmental factors are driving large-scale global migration, a shift to more people living in higher density environments, and, these are the new words, the need to plan for sustainable urban neighbourhoods that can mitigate the impacts of climate change. On page 9, in the second paragraph down, you replace the word unashamedly with proudly. And reword paragraph 2 on that page to read, and these are the existing words: we will continue to be a local government leader in environmental sustainability, and the new words are with the goal for zero net carbon emissions by 2040, full stop. And then we start the next sentence with the existing words: we will take a lead on social issues, etc. In the second last paragraph, there's a minor edit. There's a typo. I think there's an extra word there, so just to correct that. And happy for me to move on. On page 22, this is getting into the council plan, to change the final measure in the people feel safer in our neighbourhoods goal, to read: council supports family violence prevention, public lighting and other crime prevention initiatives as the indicator. Sorry, as a measure. On page 24, 6.6, so the 6 point down, in the reference to zero emissions 2040, remove the words working towards in both the measure and the strategic indicator. On page 24, under the strategic indicator of creating new parks, just suggesting some sharper wording here, that we reworded to create at least 2 new parks in areas with the least access to open space and experiencing the greatest development pressures, full stop. Set targets for the number of new parks to be created across the city. On page 28, this is C1C. This is about the design review panel. To reword to include and implement after scope. On page 35, P1F, in year 1 action, add the words and implement to read design and implement. Actually, that's the one about the design and review panel. Page 35 again, P1G, include in year 1 activities the words seek opportunities for the pilot project. So you're adding some extra words there to the existing words. On page 41, P6B, add $305,000 in the budget FY18 column. So that's just correcting an anomaly that it was mistaken. It's not adding 305. We've already budgeted for it in one of the budget papers. It just didn't appear in that column. That's for zero carbon emission. In P8B, in the financial year 19, 20 and 21, so they're recurring columns, add new words. Add $50,000 seed funding each year with the full funding amount to be determined following the feasibility study. That's about the Arts Hub. So it's asking for some seed funding in the subsequent years, not in year 1. Page 47, R4C, add the words environment management system before the reference to the EMS. And just a final resolution that we add an additional resolution to the report recommendations that the CEO be authorised to make the necessary changes in the Council Action Plan to reflect the amendments made above. That's it.
And is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Abood. Councillor Ratton, do you wish to speak?
Certainly. I won't speak to the full action plan. I think because the amendments have been put on the floor, so the changes, they're not amendments now, they're part of the substantive resolution. Happy to take any questions on that before speaking to the item. Yes.
Just have one question. There was a reference up there to cap 38, the
yes.
400, just to reflect.
So just got some further advice on that. So it was a cash for the reason why. So cap 38 is about the integrated transport strategy review. The cap says $300,000, but the full budget amount is up to $400,000. It appears other places in the budget, and so I just thought we just received some advice about that. The cap reflects the cash flow that's required this year. The full 400 is there, but it's just going to be spread over 2 financial years. So the CEO might want to answer that. So I didn't include that as an amendment.
Okay.
So just through the Mayor, the rest of those invoices will come due in likely July or August, the following financial year. So it's basically the complete project, according to the timelines on the council briefing, but the cash flow will be spent, $300,000 in year 1 and the rest falling into just over the other side of the financial year.
Okay. Councillor Ratton, is there any more points you wish to go through?
Not unless there's some questions, yes.
Okay. Councillor Kavanagh?
Just a very small point, but I actually think unashamedly is stronger than proudly. I must say I do. I actually think that weakens it, but anyway, that's just me. Anyway, that's all right. I'm not going to die in a ditch.
Okay.
Councillors, are there any more comments or questions?
Just in terms of process, are we adding additional expenditure to the budget through these amendments, or is this planning for future budget? Is this what your intention is? So you'd have to come back to the future budget to be in. Is that right?
So just in terms of the only budgetary implication, the change that has a budgetary implication is the one about the Arts Hub. So no changes for this financial year's budget, which we're approving, but it will have consequences for the subsequent 3 years. What I've asked for in the plan is to reference $50,000 as seed funding for each year, with the full amount to be determined after we finish the feasibility study in the first year. And that's to indicate that we're actually going to commit some resources to this feasibility. It's like putting some savings towards it, but it doesn't have an implication for this financial year, which is the budget we're approving. Happy to get some advice on the consequent changes that it might result in the budget papers if that's needed.
Yeah. Did you want to see that
Yeah,
advice?
I want to
Yep.
advise.
Just through the Mayor. So of all of the changes, it looks like they're really reaffirming what's currently in the budget and connecting them to the line item. The $50,000 that Councillor Ratnam's referring to, so there's some seed funding for the community hub in year 1, and the additional line says, and to commit $50,000 each year thereafter as seed funding. So that is something that is new.
That's right.
Now, what would happen is you actually wouldn't adopt that expenditure until you get to the budget next year. The key issue for councils to consider is expectations and what that means for expectations, but from a budget perspective, you will be adopting year by year.
No worries, I'm good.
Thank you.
Councillor Boot?
Yep. I just wanted to speak to these amendments as the seconder. I think that, I just want to highlight that it's mostly just language stuff, so strengthening some of the language, and it's just, I feel quite familiar with this document, and that's why I feel comfortable to second the amendments that have been put forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing this thing finished, and I think it's a body of work that we can really be proud of, and I'd like to commend everybody's involvement putting this thing together, because it's really shaping up to be a great thing for the city.
Thank you, Councillor Boot. Is there any further discussion from councillors? No? If not, I'll put that to the vote. Oh, sorry.
Any further discussion on the actual council plan? I'm happy to close the discussion if that's all right. Just in speaking to the overall item, and thanks for the support for the amendments, councillors. Just want to say, firstly, a huge thank you to the enormity of work that's gone in to prepare this document. And it's not a document that's before us, it's a live document. This is what sets out our strategic actions and our plan for the next 4 years. It's I'd say the most important piece of work that a council does in their 4-year term, and it's a result of the first sort of 6 to 8 months of really hard work by our new council group. So congratulations to everyone who's contributed to this, to the officers for their tireless and hundreds of hours of work that have gone into it, for the consultation, for everyone who made a submission to it as well, to engage with us in the process. And we did have some feedback that somebody thought it was a terrific plan, and we really welcome that feedback from the community. There's always areas for improvement, hence why we have the consultation. There are features of this plan that each and every councillor will be more proud of different parts of it, but that's what makes it so fantastic, that we all have different interests and passions as well, and we're all going to be focusing our energies to deliver the whole thing, but we'll also take a particular interest and specialisation in some areas over the others, and that's what's going to bring it all together, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. The parts that I'm particularly proud of, that's not to say I'm not proud of all the other parts, because it's a really terrific plan, is our accelerated goal towards zero carbon emissions by 2040. And what we're saying is we want an actual plan that's costed and it's implementable, so that we're going to actually reach that target. We'd probably be one of the first councils in Australia to reach that, and I believe that we can. So that's really exciting. Our goal to increase tree canopy cover to mitigate the impacts of the urban heat island effect and climate change. We've got an additional $500,000 there to ensure that the trees that we plant will grow to big canopy trees and will provide the shade and the amenity improvement that our city is going to really love and is already starting to see. The open space work that we've been doing to ensure that we've mapped out what areas of the city don't have enough access to open space. It's an incredible piece of work, and this really formalises it. That's going to be a really key goal of this council. Improving the urban development outcomes for the city, which is an issue that we're all really concerned about. Some really strong goals about how we can improve the quality of development that we're seeing in the city to make homes that are sustainable and affordable for people. The new arts hub that we've been talking about, a feasibility study into creating a new arts hub that's going to actually see us draw investment and make Moreland hopefully the capital of the arts in Victoria. They're some of the things that I am particularly proud of. There's so much more, but well done to all involved, and we look forward to making this happen, and you've got our commitment that we are going to be making sure that we bring this plan to life.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Riley, I believe Councillor Ratnam was closing at that point, so no further comments on this particular item, but perhaps at the next one you could speak then. So in that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll now move on to the adoption of the council budget, and Councillor Kavanagh is on his feet.
I move the officer recommendation on page 140 through to 145, please.
Yep, is there a seconder?
And could I raise an amendment with that at this point?
With the second
second
with
one
an
is
amendment.
a
Second with an amendment?
Or
Yep.
would you
No,
like to
You
adopt
can't
the
second
amendment?
with amendment. You have to get a seconder
I'll
first
second
before the
it.
amendment.
And then
Councillor Martin.
what was your amendment?
Okay, the amendment is to point number 6, and it's to add the following words. I'll just let the words come up on the screen, I'll read them out. Here they are. Add the following words after project, and the shopping strip at Bonwick Street, Faulkner is the project to be brought forward for design in 2017-18, construction following financial year.
That's acceptable to me as the mover.
That's fine.
Right, so that's been incorporated. Are there any further points of discussion or?
I have some amendments, but if the mover and seconder want to speak first, I'm happy to wait till.
That's right, I'll withdraw. I mean, I'll write a reply at the end, yeah.
Second, yep, sure. Just a few amendments, councillors. On page 145. So, page 145, which is a recommendation to the budget, add a new recommendation 16, that council will receive a further report on the effectiveness and outcomes of the current trial of CCTV cameras before allocating any further funding towards the renewal of CCTV cameras as specified in year 3 of the capital works budget. At a new point 17, that council receives a report about administration fees charged by council for matters such as the sale of land for council to consider, including in the fees and charges schedule. Amend point 15, that we adopt fees and charges 2017-18 in attachment 4, subject to the following changes to the schedule of fees. A, that a new fee line is introduced to the fee schedule specifically for busking permits, which sets the fee for busking at 0. On page 338, so this is the second amendment to the fees, point B, for street stall community group, add the words in brackets, including furniture for a street stall, close brackets, and that fee is already 0. Page 332, so this is point C, for Brunswick Town Hall meeting room hire for community groups, the fee is reduced to 0. And on page 333, so this is amendment D, for community halls - community groups, meeting room hire is reduced to 0. So that's for community groups only, and they're all my amendments.
Thank you. Is that agreeable to the mover?
Some of them are not agreeable to me as the
Yep.
mover, some
All
are.
right. We'll take, is there a second for Councillor Ratnam? Councillor Abood. Councillor Ratnam, do you wish to speak?
Can I ask which ones are amenable so they can be incorporated if the seconder is also happy?
Yep.
Yep.
Just with the first one, the recommendation for page on number 16.
Yep.
Am I correct that that's already in train from a resolution previously or not?
No, the previous resolution was to get a further report, I believe. We're just getting some clarification about
Yeah.
this. It'll probably come to council subsequently. But that was about operational expenditure.
Yes,
that was
that's
for
right.
the operation of the
Okay.
cameras.
Yeah.
This is actually for new cameras,
Oh, well,
which I don't believe council has made any resolution
Yeah.
around.
okay. Well, as the mover, I'm acceptable
Okay.
of that one,
Yep.
of the next one,
Yep.
of the one after.
Yep.
So the amendments of the points and the adding of the points, if you like.
Yep.
I'm happy with that. As a mover, I don't know if the seconder's comfortable with those.
Yep.
So I'm happy to incorporate those in the substantive motion.
Can I
Okay.
just clarify, does that include all the changes to the fees and charges schedule? So A, B, C, D?
Oh, sorry, no, sorry.
That's the
in
first 2
points.
points.
First 2
Yeah,
points.
first 2
Okay,
points, I'm
sure, no
sorry.
problem.
For me, as the mover, the others, I'd like voted on
Sure,
separately.
no problem.
Okay.
That's fine. So the first 2. Yeah.
All right. Well, if that's agreeable to councillors, I'm happy to vote on those first 2 points.
Are they?
They've been accepted as.
Oh,
a
they've been,
substantive
sorry, that's
motion,
right, they've been accepted. So we'll move on to the other points. Now, Councillor Ratnam, do you wish to speak to those? Or?
Certainly. So these are to amend the fees and charges schedule. So there's four changes to the fees and charges schedule. So the first one, at the moment, there's a line saying other permits, which has a $300 fee. And I saw clarification today about whether this included things like busking. We've been talking about it with the general local law. So until such time as we get the new local law and the fees with it, what we're asking for is a new line item that says busking permits is set to 0, so that we have an interim measure until we approve the new local law and fee structure. For the rest, so there's part B, the street stall community group. This is the current provision of fees, the nomination of fees for having a street stall. So we've been talking about it with the local law, handing out handbills, plus having a table where you can put your leaflets on. I saw clarification about whether that's actually interpreted as a street stall. At the moment, we don't charge any fees for a street stall, but just wanted to clarify for the community because there was some debate at the last meeting about whether it would cost $300 to have a table to put your leaflets on. Just want to clarify that that actually means the furniture as well, so it's making it more distinct.
I'm sorry, with those clarification, I'm happy to accept both of those as
For
the
A and
member.
B.
I
Okay,
am.
sure.
Yeah.
And the secondary is
Yes.
as well. And so points C and D are the final ones, and that is currently we charge, this is not for, so there's two fee structures for meeting room hires. These are smaller meeting rooms, like the Brunswick Town Hall meeting room E, and there's a few labelled on page 33 for the others. So it's Pascoe Vale, Harry Atkinson, I believe, the courthouse, and there's two others there. So these are smaller type meeting rooms. At the moment, we charge sort of about $12, $13 per hour for community groups. I want to bring that to zero, but keep the private fees as is. So we're still going to charge for private use, but it's bringing the community group use charge down to zero for both those set of small rooms.
I want to speak against that one.
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Cavanagh?
Only because we have a fees and charges policy currently for town halls and for all our meeting rooms, and community groups can apply and do get substantial discounts. I think at this point in time, the last minute on the budget, I'm not comfortable about reducing fees to zero without any consultation whatsoever.
Yep.
Yeah.
I speak to Councillor Booth?
It's currently $13.25 an hour, and the reason why I would be supporting this for community groups is just because we're finding a situation where some community groups are sort of being pushed out of other spaces, like, for example, sporting clubs, which I've had a few conversations about. As the sporting clubs become bigger and take over more of that space, with good reason, I think it's really important that we make sure that we provide a facility for community groups to be able to meet without that added financial pressure.
Thank you, Councillor Bood. And I believe the CEO wanted to shed some light on this and the implications.
Just through the Mayor, so just by way of advice from a budget implication as alterations. The fee change for busking, we think that would be a very small impact. Just orders of magnitude very minimal. The street stall one is already in there, so that's no change. The meeting room E the last 2 points are more difficult to provide advice on. I honestly don't know what the financial impact is. Just to give you a little bit of further information, straight after the meeting procedure local law is reviewed, then a review of fees for hall hire and community use, and all of those things will be included this financial year as well. So I'm just giving you that. That's been something that we have known has needed a good review, looking at all of the spaces that are available and trying to work out how they all fit. So that will come to you, but it will be after the meeting procedure local law review happens, which is in the first half of this financial year. So it's just by way of information, and just because I can't provide any further info on the budget implications of the last two.
Okay, thank you, CEO. Yeah, I would just like to say that I would be voting against these 2 points based on that information, because I think it would be good to look at this as a whole package. Additionally, in between that time, and it's only a short amount of time, councils can also sponsor particular community groups and seek an entire fee waiver through their sponsorship. So I'll be voting against those 2 points. Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to speak in favour of those points put forward by Councillor Ratnam, because while it is true that community groups can contact councillors to get councillors to sponsor, venues in order to get free hire for various community groups, a lot of community groups are not aware of that. Like, not all community groups would necessarily think to ring a councillor. Some groups have connections with particular councillors, or may be aware that councillors can assist them. But there are a lot of community groups that, have never been involved in doing this sort of thing before and might just get deterred. So I'd certainly like to speak in favour of those two. And once we've dealt with these, I've got an amendment as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Are there any further councillors who want to discuss those final points?
I just want the clarification, perhaps a way forward. I'm really supportive of this because I've been moving towards reduced fees for groups to meet. I wasn't aware that we were about to review the fee structure, so that's adds another line to it. I'd also be happy to wait for that if it wasn't going to take more than 6 months for us to review the fees, because I think it is a matter of democracy and ensuring that we build the capacity of our community to meet each other. It's a small fee at this stage. The issue of sponsorship, it's not always practicable for a councillor to sponsor a group. You have to attend the meeting. Say, for example, there's a community group that meets every second Tuesday or every second Monday, and we're at council briefings, it actually prevents our ability to sponsor those groups. So I don't think it's a good practice to rely on sponsorships to be able to waive these fees. I also worry about whether the small fee that we charge actually costs us more money to administer. It's not actually a lot of money, and so I question why we charge those fees. And actually, it is an impost, and some groups are not able to afford those fees as as much as we might consider, or some people might consider them low. They're not necessarily low for everyone. So that's my worry with it. But I'd also be happy to consider some alternative wording that if there was a fee review within the next 6 months, we can amend that to include this in a fee review within 6 months.
Yes.
Just through the Mayor, I think I would be wrong to say that you'd have a fee review completed in the next 6 months. We'll really be focusing on the meeting procedure local law over the next few months. We'd probably be picking that up around the December, January, February timeframes would be when that work would be more developed. So,
No problem. Okay, I'll keep it as is then.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from councillors on this?
Can I say something again? I've already said.
No, I think you can only speak once to
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case.
Are we done discussing this, or are we back to the
Vote on the
substantive?
amendment.
Well, we will need to vote on this, yeah. So if there's no further discussion on this, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We'll now move back to the substantive motion. Sorry, Councillor.
Do you want me to move my amendment?
Yes, now's the time to do that.
So at the end of point 1 of the budget resolution, to add with the addition of $39,000 operational funding for Brunswick Neighbourhood House operating costs, unless a consolidated venue for Brunswick Neighbourhood House, which incorporates all of their activities, becomes available early in the financial year.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Kavanagh, is that agreeable to you?
No, it's not acceptable to me as the mover.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Councillor Bolton's amendment? No? Okay, I'm afraid for want of a seconder that will lapse. We'll now return to the substantive motion. And Councillor Kavanagh, do you wish to close?
I might.
Sorry, Councillor
I think
Bolton.
others might want to speak, and then I'll close.
Sure.
Yeah.
One more amendment before.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Bolton.
One more amendment, a bit on fees and charges at the end of, where is the point? 145.
Has this been sent around, Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, not this one, just it was, in the point on fees and charges, actually, no, I'll just leave it for the moment.
Okay. Councillor Riley, did you wish to speak?
Thanks. Yeah. There are many features of the budget. People will, if they've had a chance to peruse it. Just want to touch on the fact that residents will be experiencing a 1.6% rise in our general rates this year, which is under the cap that's been set. In our capital works program, we've got over $51.35 million worth of works, which is the largest allocation we've ever made to that. There are many upgrades. I won't touch on every one of them, but I know a few people in the audience, so I want to just quickly touch on the fact that the Brunswick Hockey Ground replacement isn't actually in the projected budget, but however, the report authorises work to begin for the funding to be resolved in September, when the results for the 2016-17 financial year are reported to Council, and the results of that grant application is known, so that we can implement the changes as we've hoped that they will be undertaken. So we think we have a way to address the upgrade to those fields, so I'm hoping that will result in an upgrade there. There are The other one is the Fleming Park project, which has been coming for many years for an upgrade, is undergoing a refresh in the next few months, and I'd encourage people who are involved in the East Brunswick part of our city to be involved in that, and that's going to look at the master plan for that area. There's 200,000 set aside for the Coburg toilet project, which I know many people in this part of town will be very pleased about. Councillor Radnam's already touched on a number of items which I won't repeat. There are some other issues like the Mall Integrated Transport Strategy, which we're allocated 400,000 for, which is going to be a very important strategy coming to you for consultation. The Count Me In Sports Participation Project is a one-off grant that we're looking to support in helping children from non-English speaking backgrounds or culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds to get involved in literacy and their communities as a way of accessing that. And there are many other points in the budget which I'd encourage people to have a look at, but those are the ones I want to feature at this stage. I'm sure I've overlooked a number of good ones, but thank you to the staff and all the team and my fellow councillors for working on this budget. I think it's my first budget as a councillor, and it's a fairly, what I would call progressive and I think fairly ambitious budget, so I look forward to us being able to implement it.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Riley, Councillor Martin, and then Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. So I could not speak about this budget and plan tonight. There has been many hours of hard work that has gone in from people around this table, from council, from officers, from the exec. I think what this document shows is the direction that Moreland is going in, and I want to highlight as well that we didn't seek a rate cap exemption. We've kept rates below 2%. They're only going to go up 1.6%. The waste charges are only going to go up by 0.4%. I mean, these are tiny compared to some of the other councils at the moment. If you have a look at other council budgets, you'll see that these numbers are really low compared to a lot of our neighbours. I mean, what we're doing is we've got ambitious targets to improve customer service. We're looking at enforcement officers for planning. We're looking at creating reserves to save for future major projects like the Wheatsheaf Community Hub. These are all things that we've listened to people in the community, and what we're doing is we're delivering all of these things to build Moreland, as well as really targeting and focusing on our ongoing commitment for zero carbon evolution, looking at zero net emissions by 2040. We've got $500,000 in there for additional urban forest strategy. And we're also looking at enhancing and accelerating the shopping strip renewal program. So we're moving that forward. We're moving these things forward. And also as well, one of the things close to my heart is looking at waste and recycling initiatives that we're not currently doing and bringing that forward in with education programs. So we're doing all of this and huge amounts more. And we're doing all of it while we're keeping rates to that 1.6%. So I really encourage everyone out there to grab this document, because I know we'll all be walking around with it under our arms going forward and pointing to things. But this is a really great document, and I really commend everyone who's been involved.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, I'd like to just come back to my amendment to amend point 15, which is the point about the fees and charges. To add the words subject to reducing the fees and charges for occasional childcare to approximately the level of inflation.
Yes.
So, just through the Mayor, those budget papers reflect a reduction of that fee increase to 2%. So if you remember, the draft budget was a 10% increase, and you pointed it out at the budget during budget time. It was recently circulated that these budget papers have been updated for the occasional care increase to be 2%. Remembering that it's only the occasional care centres at Brunswick, Baths, which we run, which your council run, as opposed to the rest of the childcare in the community.
So I'm going from the budget papers out there because it was just easier to look at the hard copy rather than search through the laptop. The figures there do not indicate This is page 313.
Okay, we'll just have a quick look.
There's a mix of figures.
There is, yeah.
Some figures are only 1.6% increase. Some figures are 17.85% increase. There's a big difference.
So just through the Mayor,
These
thank you.
old papers.
And I did have to make eye contact with the finance manager to communicate this with us. So the 10% increase was the weighted average of increase in childcare fees. The weighted average now is 2%. So it's made up of a whole bunch of different fees. Some of them are charged more often than others. The weighted average is 2%. It was 10%, and you did point that out, and it is 2%. But you won't pick that up in the individual charges. Some of them are, above and below.
Councillor Walton, is that satisfactory?
Yes, it is. You want me to where the weighted average is mentioned?
Sorry, Councillor Walton, what were you after?
Where the weighted average of 2% is mentioned, because I couldn't find that when I was looking through.
All right, let me just ask.
Yep.
Is that mentioned in there?
Sorry, I missed that.
The weighted average, is that mentioned in there?
So just again through the Mayor, and again I'm relaying this information, zero notice. So I'm relying on what I'm hearing from the finance manager. You would have seen an email from officers that communicated the value of this was about $2,500. It was reduced in the budget as a result of your comments. I can't tell you where the weighted averages are in the document. I would have to search that through. And also, my understanding is that's the advice from our finance manager that was the weighted average. So I'm passing on to you with the best I can do with your information.
Withdraw it? Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Now, is there any further comments? Councillor Bood.
Yep, I just have one more comment, which is to do with the Upfield bike path and connecting that to the Western Ring Road. And I just wanted to point out that the money coming from council will be coming if we can get the money that the state government will hopefully put in towards that project. And so I don't know about everyone else, but I'll be lobbying the state government to put in that money for the North East Ward.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Bood. Are there any further comments from councillors?
Yeah.
Councillor Fleming? Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Kavanagh.
No, it's fine. It's a budget.
Look, this is my first budget as well. I want to thank the general managers and executive team for putting this together, and also the councillors. I think it's been a pretty good process. I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought there'd be a lot of fighting or something for resources, but it looks like everyone gets a little bit of something out of this. So I know some councillors are passionate about food security and there's investment there, and others are passionate about trees and environment, there's investment there, and others are passionate about public amenities and investment there. But of particular note to me is the $30,000 being invested in the Count Me In program. This is a program that's extremely important, doing some fantastic work, especially in the north of Moreland, in connecting a lot of young kids from non-English speaking backgrounds into sport in a sustainable way, not just sort of coming in and playing a little bit of cricket for my one-off session, but actually joining a club and actually building friendships and parents connecting with other parents, and it actually fosters a lot of social inclusion. It's a super important program. I understand the program will now probably expand more into the Glenroy side, where there's a bit more Arabic-speaking people, rather than the Urdu focus that it's got at the moment. So that's fantastic. We're expanding the reach of that. And for me, also the investment into developing that Mudden Reserve master plan is extremely important. This is a long-term strategy for the south of Fawkner. What do we want that to become? There was a fantastic meeting to kick that off with Councillor Abood and Councillor Carly Hannon and I, where it was a very productive meeting about which stakeholders we want to start engaging, and I think it's quite an exciting program. But of most passion for me is the bringing forward Bonwick Street in the Streetscape Renewal Program. This is a street that we've identified definitely needs an uplift. There's a pedestrian crossing that needs to be installed to make sure it's nice and safe for the residents of Fawkner, but also needs a little bit of love and attention in terms of park benches and public amenity and trees to really bring that streetscape back up to life. So thank you, and I commend all councillors and the executive team for working with me. I know I've had a few meetings with some councillors. Thank you for your patience over those few weeks, and look forward to working on the next budget.
Thank you. Councillor Carly Hannon.
So this is my first budget as well, and I also would like to thank all the councillors and council officers and the community for the work that's gone into this budget. I think it's one that we could definitely be proud of. One of my portfolios is sport and rec, and I've really enjoyed doing that with Councillor Kavanagh and meeting with all the wonderful sporting clubs and volunteers in our community. So of particular note to me was the Canberra Reserve facilities and the Morris Reserve Pavilion as well, because that's something that I saw promised by Jane Garrett and the state government, and met with the clubs early on in that, and to see that it's going to finally be in those final steps is really excellent. Another one is the Oxygen Youth Facility, and the great work that the Oxygen Youth Committee has done, and to see that really being pushed by the young people of Moreland, and that it's going to really benefit so many in our community and future generations. And the other one is the study that we've just recently decided to do on the level crossing removal, because I think it's really important that, that something that's so great about Moreland Council and always has been is that we are very future thinking, and we recognise our role in, not only doing the things that are very important as a council, but also thinking about the big picture of what's going to really impact and influence our community. And so this is another step in thinking about linkages and how our community is going to move into the future, looking at bike paths, public transport and things like that.
Thank you, Councillor Carlingham. Councillor Kavanagh?
If there's no other discussion, I might close the debate. Good. Well, first of all, can I congratulate in particular the 5 new councillors who were elected at the last October election. I really think that this has been a terrific process, and it's been a terrific process because we've got a really engaged council. And that's very much attributable to the first 5 newly elected councillors. So I congratulate you on that, councillors. And it's been, someone mentioned, pretty stress-free, and I think it has, because you've got a group of people who are engaged, a group of people who are committed, and a group of people that want to do things, and that's everybody around the council chambers. There are 5 new councillors and there's 6 returning councillors. So congratulations. Of course, I want to thank our officers for their brilliant work. Can I say that I see that the headline figure is a capital works budget of $51.5 million. This is my 13th budget. In my first budget, I remember the capital works budget was $4.8 million. $4.8 million 13 years ago, and now we're $51.5 million. Right? Obviously, that's thanks to the Moreland ratepayer, of course, but it's also thanks to the planning that has gone in over many, many years. And really, to be honest, to quote Paul Keating, this is the budget that brings home the bacon, right? There's a lot of things here that have been going on for many years that are being addressed. Well, we've heard about the Merleston Hall, that's being addressed in this financial year. We're always talking about City Oval. The master plan is being done in this financial year. Oak Park Pool is being completed with $15.5 million of this budget going to Oak Park Pool. We see a whole range of things, the Pascoe Vale Community Centre, a whole range of things that have been floating around that this budget brings home. So I encourage every councillor to vote for this budget. I can see no reason why a councillor wouldn't, because, before I finish up, I do want to say, John, we haven't forgotten about the Brunswick Hockey Club. We haven't. You'll see there that your time will come in September, and we're committed to looking at that time. So please, don't think we're not committed to that. We are. All right? So, councillors, I do hope and that you will vote for this budget. I can see no reason why not to do so. I do get frustrated when councillors do vote against budgets, because it does, if that was the majority, it would mean we have no money to do anything. Be a little bit like, quoted Paul Keating, a little bit like Malcolm Fraser blocking supply in 1975, basically. Be the same thing. There'd be no money to do anything. So therefore, councillors, I encourage you to vote for this budget. I congratulate you on the work that you've put in. I congratulate our officers, particularly under the leadership of our CEO, and really, there's not a revaluation year, so therefore this should be really well received by our community. And just in final, can I say congratulations to the 78 submissions that we received on the proposed budget, and on 24 different topics, to give you an example of the breadth of council endeavours, and many changes have been made as a result of those submissions. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing this endorsed.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Well, on that note, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
We have it listed as unanimous.
Yes. Excellent.
feels like it needs a clap, doesn't it?
Very clever. Great. Well, great work, councillors. So I'll now declare the council meeting closed. Thank you for coming this evening, and to those people who are still live streaming at home, thank you for watching. And I declare the meeting closed.